In early 2026, the long-standing shadow war between the United States, Israel, and Iran erupted into a direct military conflict. The joint campaign, known as Operation Epic Fury, transitioned years of covert tension into a series of devastating strikes on Iranian soil. Tehran responded by targeting the global economy's most vulnerable pressure point. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, or IRGC, implemented an effective military blockade here at the Strait of Hormuz. This single choke point handles 27% of all global maritime oil trade. The disruption was immediate. Daily transits through the strait dropped by 80%, while the price of Brent crude rose to $126 a barrel. What began as a regional exchange has effectively paralyzed international trade. To resolve the crisis, Washington has issued a direct diplomatic ultimatum to the Iranian leadership. Late Tuesday, the Trump administration utilized Pakistani intermediaries to deliver a high-stakes 15-point ceasefire proposal directly to Tehran. The plan requires an immediate 30-day pause in hostilities. This window is meant to finalize terms that would remove Iran's ability to project power across the Middle East. The terms are absolute. They demand total Iranian disarmament in exchange for the lifting of the international sanctions that have crushed the country's economy. Analyzing the specific demands within this 15-point document is the only way to determine if this is a viable path to peace or a roadmap for a much longer war. This satellite view shows the Natanz facility, one of the primary targets for decommissioning. The U.S. proposal demands that Iran dismantle all nuclear capabilities, permanently end all uranium enrichment on its soil, and destroy its most critical facilities, including Fordo and Isfahan. The immediate concern is Iran's existing stockpile of 440 kilograms of uranium enriched to 60%. The ultimatum requires that this material be surrendered to international authorities or diluted into a lower, non-explosive grade. The danger lies in separative work, a measure of the effort and time needed to enrich uranium. Reaching 60% enrichment takes about 55,000 work units. The final jump to 90% weapons-grade material takes only 500 units more. Technically, 99% of the work required to build a nuclear weapon has already been done. To verify compliance, the UN's nuclear watchdog, the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, would be granted full, unrestricted, and unannounced access to every Iranian site and all relevant personnel. Beyond the nuclear program, the deal targets Iran's regional influence. Tehran would be forced to abandon its network of proxy forces, stop funding Hezbollah and Hamas, and guarantee the Strait of Hormuz remains an open maritime zone. These demands are structured to remove every military and geopolitical deterrent the Iranian regime has developed over the last 30 years. In exchange for this total surrender of its programs, Washington is offering full international sanctions relief and the removal of the UN snapback mechanism, the rule that allows sanctions to be instantly reinstated if Iran violates a deal. The U.S. has also offered technical assistance for civilian nuclear energy. This would include U.S. support for electricity generation at the Bushehr plant, seen here. Tehran has rejected the plan, calling the demands unrealistic. Instead, the Iranian government has issued a 5-point counterproposal intended to preserve its sovereign control over the region. Iran's counter conditions are just as steep. They demand the closure of all U.S. military bases in the Persian Gulf, financial reparations for the war, and the recognized right to collect transit fees from every ship passing through the Strait of Hormuz. These two documents reveal a deep diplomatic deadlock. One side demands Western-led dismantlement, the other, absolute Iranian control over the Gulf's economic arteries. The impact of this deadlock is being felt most acutely by nations like India. Under Prime Minister Narendra Modi, the country has faced an immediate economic crisis and domestic protests triggered by severe fuel shortages. This map of gas infrastructure shows why. India relies on the Strait of Hormuz for half of its natural gas and 90% of its LPG, used for heating and cooking. Currently, 20% of the world's supply is trapped behind the blockade. Prime Minister Modi has responded by accelerating a master plan to achieve energy sovereignty by 2047. The goal is to separate the Indian economy from its reliance on Middle Eastern fossil fuels. To achieve this, India has signed a $2.6 billion long-term deal for uranium from Canada's Cameco to power its nuclear reactors, while simultaneously launching a massive domestic green hydrogen mission. The 2026 conflict has forced global economies to treat Middle Eastern energy dependency as a risk that can no longer be managed through traditional trade. For India, decoupling is no longer a choice, it is a requirement for survival. On the water, the reality is increasingly chaotic. Many ships are now going dark by turning off their transponders to avoid attack, while others pay fees directly to the IRGC to use a risky Tehran-approved transit route. The 30-day window for the U.S. peace plan is closing. With neither side showing a willingness to compromise, the military standoff continues to tighten its grip on global markets. Will diplomatic pressure eventually reopen these economic arteries, or has the standoff begun a long-term fracture in how the world trades for energy? Even if a ceasefire is signed tomorrow, the assumption that global energy routes are inherently secure has been proven false. The world of 2026 has been changed, regardless of the ultimatum's outcome.